Jesus started his public mission around the age of 30 and was inaugurated as the Messiah.
That's crazy as hell. Because think about this, they have so many versions of the Bible and Jesus' history. No bullshit, let's go. Welcome to Devin GTV, and today we're about to watch How Did Catholicism Start? This is about to be interesting.
The almost 2,000-year-old Catholic Church is one of the oldest institutions in the world. The Catholic tradition considers itself a continuation, not a branch or successor, to early Christianity.
I was just going to say, I think Catholic is the oldest religion in the world, and I feel like other religions kind of piggybacked off of it, if I'm not mistaken.
Still, some non-Catholic theologians and historians dispute this claim. For the sake of this video, we shall start at the perceived beginning of Catholicism by its followers, which lay with its Messiah, Jesus Christ. We shall also explore the beginning of the Roman Catholic Church, which many non-Catholic sects of Christianity claim to be the foundation of Catholicism. According to St. John, Jesus Christ is the eternal Son of the Father because his nature is divine, and his purpose is the preservation of the world. But the Son of God also has a human nature in which he is simply Jesus of Nazareth. As such, his purpose is to symbolize the religious growth of humanity. Thus, Jesus has a dual nature, a divine one and a human one. When unified in one person, these natures create the perfect man.
I know some religions do like some sort of like symbolism. I don't know if there's like head, soul, and spirit, or head, heart, and spirit, or something like that.
The ideal of virtue and piety. Jesus Christ was born in Bethlehem in Judea sometime between 6 and 4 BCE. It is widely believed that he was born during the reign of the first Roman emperor, Caesar Augustus. We know little to nothing about the childhood of Jesus Christ.
You notice something? People never ever talk about Jesus Christ as a child. It's almost like he was born as a man. I never thought about that shit, man. You would think that they would have like this long history of Jesus Christ's whole entire life, but they don't.
But there are apocryphal gospels that try to fill the void. Jesus started his public mission around the age of 30 and was inaugurated as the Messiah by baptism, performed by John the Baptist. But his public work lasted for only about 3 years.
Damn,
The most profound meaning of the history of the Christian religion, and subsequently Catholicism, is condensed in these 3 years.
That's crazy as hell. Because think about this. They have so many versions of the Bible and Jesus' history. But it was only 3 years? I thought it was way longer than that.
Jesus was a Jew, and he was introduced to Jewish teachings. His teachings never left the sphere of Jewish beliefs, but he expanded on them and gave them a new meaning. He chose 12 apostles, also Jews, and 70, sometimes 72, Gentile disciples. Gentiles do not practice the Jewish faith. They were all common people, illiterate fishermen and field workers. He did not choose scholars and leaders, nor did he preach to mainly wealthy and powerful individuals. His world revolved around the lowborn.
Question, why y'all think that is? Why did he not preach like leaders and wealthy people and things like that? In my opinion, I feel like people like that probably felt like they did not need Jesus because they had everything they wanted. Especially like when you're rich and wealthy and of a higher power, it's kind of like, what can you give me? That's my assumption. What do y'all think?
Of sinners, thieves, and betrayers. He traveled through Palestine and the towns and villages north of the Sea of Galilee, teaching with power and authority that gave him the people's unconditional obedience and love. He had no previous training on how to teach, and he had to rely on his intuition and experience to shape the minds of his disciples.
What experience?
The culmination of Christ's mission came with his entrance into the city of Jerusalem.
Think about that. What
By
experience?
this time, he had already had a reputation for being a political and religious agitator, especially among the Romans. Much of what we know about Jesus and his life comes from the Gospels written by the 4 evangelists, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. The main goal of the Gospels was not to record a biographical and historically accurate account of Jesus' life, but to persuade readers of his divine nature.
Think about it, like how could you really write about Jesus' divine life if you weren't there, especially if it was only 3 years? Unless you walk with Jesus, you kind of like have to envision what it was like on what you thought Jesus thought.
The Gospels were written some 40 years, some even say 70 years after the death of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
Their authors never claimed to know the life of their Messiah. They simply wrote down what remained in the collective memory of the Christian communities. It is this collective memory that lived on to form the Catholic Church.
That's interesting because if you don't really know, you're just going based off memory and what? What research?
The Christian faith began with the act of resurrection. Before that, Jesus was regarded as the Messiah of an already existing faith, Judaism. But early Christianity wasn't anything like we know it in the modern day. It was still just a branch of Judaism, and its followers were members of an apocalyptic messianic Jewish sect. Resurrection was not a new concept in Judaism, as early Christians did not see themselves as followers of a different faith. They only thought that Jesus' resurrection gave a new meaning and clarity to their religious sentiment. It is essential to understand that at this point, Christianity was still not a religion on its own. It was a sect within Judaism. Therefore, the apostles didn't spread a new faith, but rather a new thought within the already existing one.
So they didn't really create Catholicism. It was basically born from Judaism. Is that what it is? They kind of like had this idea of took Judaism and brought about this new faith.
The apostles and their followers remained faithful to the temple and Judaic law. But not all Jewish leaders welcomed this new sect and the belief that Jesus was the promised Messiah. The spread of Christianity was not an explosive event. Instead, it occurred gradually. At first, it came to the Jewish communities around the Mediterranean Sea. As they began fearing persecution in Jerusalem, the apostles spread their faith in other countries. When the first Christians reached Antioch, an ancient Greek city in modern-day Turkey, the spread of the church exploded and changed the history of the world. This was one of the first places where the Gentiles were baptized, and the faith spread out of the closed Jewish communities. Paul is regarded as the most important individual of the apostolic age. The New Testament has 27 books, of which Paul authored 14. These are known as the Pauline epistles. Some of these were most likely written by his students in his name, but at least 7 of them have been authenticated as being Paul's work. To appeal to the non-Jews, Paul stripped the Gospels of all Jewish characteristics and made them more attractive to everyone.
See, now that there is where I question, because you took what you didn't like and created a new religion. You can't recreate religion if it is what it is, right? Just because you like something, that don't mean you can switch it up. Is that where Catholicism came from?
Paul saw Christianity as a liberation from the strict laws of the Jewish faith, and he believed that it was enough to have faith in Jesus to receive salvation. Around 50 CE, the Council of Jerusalem was summoned. The main goal was to resolve the issue of the Gentiles once and for all. Surprisingly, Peter spoke positively about the Gentiles, expressing his belief that both Jews and non-Jews were granted salvation through the grace of Jesus. Peter is an important figure in the Christian faith. Jesus granted him preeminence, so he is seen as the bedrock of the Catholic institution. In fact, the Bishop of Rome, also known as the Pope, is considered the apostolic successor to Peter. The Council of Jerusalem decided to allow the Gentiles exemption from some Jewish laws, but not others. Many traditionalists were content, but some refuted the decision. The Roman tribune arrested Paul, thus saving his life from conservative Jews. St. Paul appealed to Emperor Nero to transfer him to Rome. Pagan Rome could not allow the spread of a new, uniform version of Judaism. They perceived it as a threat not only to their religious values, but to the status quo as well.
What?
Paul was eventually sentenced to death in Rome.
What? Because someone threatened. I ain't gonna say he threatened. Because you didn't want someone else to go out there and preach the gospel and persuade or deter people from what you thought. You sentenced him to death? What? What kind of religion is that? What about thou shalt not kill?
Beheaded. However, Christianity had continued to spread, and by the end of the 1st century, it was a well-established faith. As for the exact date of the Catholic faith, that remains a matter of some dispute. According to the Catholic tradition, the Catholic Church was established exactly 50 days after the crucifixion, on Pentecost. For the first 60 or so years, it was referred to as the Way. But by the beginning of the 2nd century, the word Catholic started finding its way into the zeitgeist. One of the earliest usages of the word comes from a letter written by St. Ignatius in 108. So they consider the apostolic age a purview of the Catholic Church. Some historians suggest otherwise, claiming that Constantine founded the Catholic Church. This school of thought believes that there is no clear lineage from the apostles to the Pope, and that the problem of the Great Apostasy, which was emphasized in the Lutheran Reformation, was present even during the 1st and 2nd centuries. Furthermore, the first official Catholic Church was the Roman Catholic Church, founded in the 4th century. The spread of Christianity among pagans, though it was persecuted during the previous 3 centuries, was quite the phenomenon. There are different theories as to what contributed to this spread. A popular claim is that its disregard for the status quo made it famous.
You know what's funny is that they condemned and killed one man thinking he was going to stop the religion from spreading. But look, it got even more popular than ever.
In other words, Christianity owes its success to the love it preached. The Christians devoted themselves not only to the rich, but also to the workers, slaves, sinners, prisoners, soldiers, travelers, orphans, widows, and anyone
Everybody.
in peril and need. Christianity had a morally higher ground, but it did not boast about it.
I agree. I mean, because if you are pure of heart and you truly believe in the divine and you live by the divine power of Jesus Christ, then what's the boast about? You're doing this stuff from the heart. I mean, all those riches and wealths and all those things that you have don't come from you, will come from man above, right?
It was a religion of peace and love. Many converted pagans, among them philosophers Tatian and Justin, admitted that they were attracted to Christianity because of its morals. While there was a hierarchy of the missionaries, apostles, and other officials of the Christian church, it had become a well-defined system by the 2nd century with authorities such as bishops, priests, and deacons. This organization came in the form of the monarchical episcopate, shortly after the first epistle of Clement. The church built its structure on 3 doctrines: the bishops, who were the apostles' direct successors, the canonical scripture, and the authoritative creed. Over the years, the Church of Rome had raised itself above the other churches because it claimed to be the seat of Saints Paul and Peter. It became even more powerful when Christianity was adopted by the Roman emperors, especially Constantine.
Of course, you have someone who of higher power and adopts a particular religion. Everyone looks at that like, oh my God, like, and then he's fucking persuasive. If you don't believe in what I believe in.
In 313, he met with Licinius, who ruled part of the empire, and pressured him into agreeing on complete religious tolerance. The Edict of Milan, which allowed Christians to be free and retrieve all of their property and preach their religion as they saw fit, was a major milestone.
Saw fit. What does that mean?
Gradually, Constantine started suppressing paganism. In his early days, he still acted as the supreme pontiff of the pagan religion, and he paid homage to the sun god. But later, he started publicly displaying Christian symbols and imposing various restrictions on pagan ceremonies and rituals.
Changed up.
According to tradition, he converted to Christianity in 312. Constantine's genuine acceptance of Christians would only come once he began identifying the state's interests as being the same as the church's interests. He hoped to achieve the unity of the state and the church, and it would use his imperial power to meddle in religious affairs. In 324, Constantine became the sole ruler of the entire empire. In 325, the emperor gathered more than 200 of the empire's bishops in the First General Ecumenical Council, known as the First Council of Nicaea. He took a personal interest in the debate and even joined the council on a few occasions. But it seemed that the matter wouldn't be easily settled, and it continued to bring disunity in the church until the death of Constantine in 337. The answer to when did Catholicism start will be different depending on who you ask. Some will point to Constantine's unification of the state and the church, while others draw a papal lineage from Peter and the church fathers. There is no simple answer, and it is a multifaceted question that people have argued about for centuries. Just like any other religion, there is no absolute common ground. The Catholics believe their church was founded by none other than Jesus Christ, and they draw their spirit from the ancient period and the tradition of the early centuries. The popes felt it was their duty to preserve the purity of the faith. The only way they knew how to do that was by preserving the old doctrines, dogmas, and traditions. Others claim that Catholicism as a branch may have emerged anywhere between the 1st and 4th centuries.
It's kind of hard to say when Catholicism started if it came from Judaism, right? And I assume all the other religions came from Judaism, which is Jesus' original beliefs.
but that it did not derive from the Messiah himself.
When do you guys think that Catholicism actually started, and do you believe that Catholicism originated from Judaism?